Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. And the one hypocrisy that I just love covering is the issue of domestic extremism and radicalism. It's something that I really believe should be quantified, because the left can't do it. They don't have enough examples. That's what I say in every single video. They have January 6, which, by the way, I'm going to be making a video tomorrow, further exposing just how much of a scam that whole Democrat narrative about J6 really is. But that's another issue for another time. The point is, they just go on and on and on, beating the dead horse of January 6th because they have absolutely nothing else. Meanwhile, we continue to stack up more and more receipts, evidence, examples of leftist extremism operating in plain view. And today at the Post-Millennial, they have an expose led by journalist Andy Ngo, showing just how blatant and right in the open leftist extremism really is. And so it's yet again another example to add to the list, a list that continues to grow longer and longer and longer. But here we go, another example of leftist extremism and leftist calls and threats to violence. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so take a look at this. Do I support violence? Yes. Journalist outed as Antifa member reaffirms commitment to political violence. The particular individual furry and left-wing journalist who created the bloodthirsty Colorado Springs Antifa Twitter account has doubled down on the calls for violence and doxing. After the Post-Millennial's Andy Ngo identified Beetle as the creator of the Antifa account, which was banned last week by Elon Musk's Twitter, the activist locked their personal account. However, Beetle went back into public mode as of Wednesday in order to call for violence once again. Andy Ngo releases his expose. Breaking. At COS Anti-Fascists, the Colorado Springs Cells of Antifa has been suspended on Twitter. The account has operated for years, instructing comrades to assault people and directing members to get the home addresses, phone numbers of targets. It had 15,000 followers. Here are some of the examples. Why hasn't anyone smashed Teeb's gaming camera yet? She is producing some of the most reckless riot footage we have seen, and anyone criticizing her for being the eyes and ears of the pigs are getting banned. Here's another tweet. A nationwide recall has been issued on all transphobes' teeth. It's up to each and every one of us to help out where we can. Just a stunningly tolerant individual. This is the individual who was running that account, that Antifa account, issuing constant calls to violence and calls for doxing political opponents. This individual, Heidi Beetle, then confirmed publicly that Andy Ngo was right and she was in fact the individual behind the COS Antifa account. So I guess it is time to come clean. They're kinda right. You know what they say about broken clocks? I did start the COS Antifa account and the blog. I did my part to stem the rising tide of fascism, but I have been retired for a while now. I think a big part of my gravitating toward Antifa was a substitute for the rush and excitement of being in the army. Pretty much everything we did was heavily influenced by small unit tactics and Ranger handbook stuff. It was fun to be a part of a team and F shit up again. And of course, with my background, I had a real low tolerance for the right's use of faux military aesthetic. Not exactly sure where she gets that from. Maybe some of the Fed groups, but anyways, the militia posers and plate carriers hiding behind rows of cops. They ain't S. Tough girl Heidi Beetle really calling out the right-wing wannabe militia members for not being real or tough enough. But anyways, a character to say the least, and an individual who confirmed that she was behind an account that was recently banned for issuing calls to violence. But of course, did Heidi Beetle learn her lesson? Well, not exactly. Here she is as she reemerges back onto Twitter. I am very proud of how miserable I made all those a-holes' lives, meaning individuals and groups that she identifies as far-right enemies. If I could go back in time, not only would I do it all again, but knowing what I know about January 6th, I would do it with a renewed vigor and ferocity. You can do it too. Form an affinity group. Dox some chuds. Here is Heidi Beetle reemerging on her Twitter account, telling her followers to, quote, dox some chuds. And what she means by chuds is, of course, conservatives and right-wingers. But she continues, quote, do I support violence? Yes. F 'em. Remember Unite the Right? This year's Idaho Pride, Club Q, countless examples show that these people can and will harm marginalized people, and the cops and the system aren't going to stop them. Now, what Heidi doesn't realize is that she basically just proved my point. The left is so desperate for examples of extremism that the only thing that she could point to is the Club Q situation, a situation where there is zero definitive proof to suggest that that incident was politically motivated or that the perpetrator was somehow a right-wing chud, to use her own language. But here she is, using fringe, extreme examples to make her point in the most disingenuous of fashion, as she very clearly calls for violence. Quote, do I support violence? Yes. F 'em. This is left-wing social media. This is what we have been speaking about for years. They continue to point the finger and say, look at the violence, look at the calls to violence. Donald Trump issued calls to violence even though he told people to be peaceful and support law enforcement. Meanwhile, these lefties are saying F the pigs, F the chuds, let's dox them and commit violence against them. They're doing it on a constant basis, calling for violence, issuing calls to violence, riling up the mob using propaganda, fake news, distorting the facts in order to spew more hatred, more division, and create more radicalism, and it's leading to actual violence. Doxing people's personal information, assaults, arson, vandalism, all the way up to politically motivated attempted homicide and homicide. Let's not forget a Bernie Sanders supporting left-winger type stormed onto the baseball field during a congressional baseball match and fired shots at Steve Scalise. Like I always mention, let's not forget Mr. 100% Antifa Michael Reynolds, who, by the way, the left memorialized. Let's not forget the heinous act that he committed on the streets of Portland that horrible night. I mean, it's back to back. 4 Antifa individuals in Atlanta, Georgia were just arrested on domestic terror charges for terrorizing a community, burning down people's homes, assaulting people, attempting to intimidate the public to achieve political ends. It's nonstop. I mean, that was like 3 or 4 days ago. And now we have mainstream Antifa journalists threatening violence on Twitter. It literally never ends with these completely unhinged leftoids. We have countless examples, actual receipts. And here's your left, by the way, that works in the corporate press and is defended by the mainstream. Mrs. Heidi Beadle works for the Colorado Times Recorder. And here's a statement released by their official Twitter. We stand behind Heidi Beadle's record of excellent journalism here at the COT Times Recorder and elsewhere. We are proud to have her as a colleague and friend, #CoPolitics. Quentin Young writes, Colorado journalist Heidi Beadle has provided invaluable coverage of conspiracy theorists, far-right activity in the state. To get these stories, she often ventures fearlessly into hostile environments and comes away with exclusive reporting. It's an inspiration. So being a violent Antifa member, issuing what I can only deem as terroristic threats, is somehow inspirational and invaluable and defended by the corporate press. But we're supposed to believe that the true threat of radicalism and extremism exists on the right. I mean, the examples that I just mentioned earlier, 2 of the most recent. There's a whole lot more than that, but we'll just those 2 examples, right? The Steve Scalise incident and the Michael Reynolds incident. Well, those are 2 right off the top of my head. Let's think of a comparable MAGA extremist chud incident to compare and contrast. Well, probably the closest you're going to get to an actual concrete example is the Juicy Smollett hoax, the MAGA country hoax. Their narrative is absolute garbage, and here we go, once again, another example of a far-left mainstream media Antifa journalist issuing direct calls to violence and dox on her Twitter account. But somehow, we're the bad guys. Give me a break. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel if you guys are up for it. I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.